Hi everyone. So in this video, we are going to take a closer look at poverty, specifically in the United States. We'll discuss how poverty is defined. We will explore how poverty is a social problem, meaning that it's something that affects everyone in our society, not just the people that are actually living in poverty. And then we'll also take a closer look at different demographics of people that are specifically impacted by poverty in the United States today. Just an opening quote here from Nelson Mandela, who said that poverty is not an accident like slavery and apartheid. It is man-made and can be removed by the actions of human beings. I think this is really important for us to understand. A lot of people think that poverty is just kind of naturally existing in our societies, that it's inevitable that we need to have people who are living in poverty in order for society to function, which is kind of a bizarre argument that structural functionalists make, which we'll talk about in the next video. However, that's definitely a myth. We don't need poverty in our society, and as we'll talk about in just a minute here, having poverty, especially at the rates that we do in the United States, is bad for everyone in our society, not just the people that are living in poverty. So a couple learning objectives for this particular presentation. First, to distinguish why poverty is a societal problem rather than an individualistic problem. Again, we're always very quick to attribute poverty to an individual in our society. If you're poor, it's because you're not working hard enough. You're not doing what you need to get a job or to get a degree, to get a secure, better employment. However, as we're going to talk about in this particular presentation, poverty is something that is definitely a structuralized social problem. We're going to describe demographic statistics on people living in poverty in the United States. And then in the next mini lecture, we'll also apply theories of functionalism, conflict theory, and symbolic interactionism to explain poverty sociologically. And in that next presentation, we will also discuss some sociologically informed solutions to how we could go about solving the problem of poverty. Specifically, we'll kind of take a look at what other countries are doing or have been doing to reduce poverty rates and what's worked well in other places that we could hopefully apply here in the United States. So to begin, let's talk about some of the perceptions people currently hold about poverty in the US. There's a common perception that as a society, we should not be responsible for attempting to get rid of poverty. Many politicians and much of the public blame for the poor being poor, and they oppose increasing federal spending to help the poor and even want to reduce such spending. So you hear a lot of discussion in current political debates about getting rid of funding programs that are designed to help people who are living below the poverty line. A lot of people think we shouldn't be wasting, money on people who are living below the poverty line, which obviously from a sociological perspective is very problematic. This view blames the victim rather than blaming the system. And again, remember, in sociology, we are always going to be critical of the system first. We are never going to immediately blame an individual without first taking into account what structural factors are at play that could be causing these systems of inequalities to exist and perpetuate in our society. While it is easy to think of poverty as a quote-unquote poor people problem, poverty affects everyone in our society. Even if you never have and never will physically live below the poverty line, you are going to be negatively impacted by poverty, and you already have been negatively impacted by the system of poverty in the United States. So let's talk about some of the societal consequences of poverty. The US spends much more money than it needs to because of the consequences of poverty currently. Poor people experience worse health, more family problems, higher crime rates, and many other problems, all of which our nation spends billions of dollars on annually to address. About 75% of Americans between the ages of 20 and 75 will live in or near poverty for at least 1 year in their lives, and many of them will rely on some form of a welfare program. So it's kind of ignorant to assume that you're never going to live in poverty, to assume that you would never need to rely on any sort of federal or state funding to help you if you would ever fall below the poverty line, because the majority of us, in fact 3 out of 4 of us, will fall below the poverty line at some point during the middle age of our lives. If the US poverty rate was comparable to other societies, our economy could literally save billions of dollars. Something we'll take a look at in the next mini lecture is how poor we specifically are doing here in the United States at resolving the poverty issues that we have. Other societies have much lower poverty rates and are therefore saving billions of dollars because they're not wasting their money on these kind of putting band-aids on bullet wounds. They're just actually solving the problem that exists. And by doing that, they can save that money to distribute it to better things like universal health care or free college tuition for people. Whereas here in the United States, we're spending billions of dollars every year on this problem that we could resolve. So a societal call to action to convince people that poverty is an us problem, not a you problem. Poverty costs our nation billions of dollars that could be spent elsewhere. Poverty stifles our nation's economic growth. Poverty contributes to crime and other social problems. And the majority of Americans will experience poverty-like conditions at some point in their life. Therefore, as a resolution, everyone in the U.S. should want to reduce poverty, not just poor people. So let's take a closer look at who are the poor, what groups of people, what demographics are most significantly impacted by poverty in the United States. Well, first, it would help to understand how we actually calculate poverty. Poverty became a national concern in the U.S. in the 1960s. The poverty line was developed as a measure of income that's used by the U.S. government to determine who is eligible for subsidies, programs, and different benefits. The poverty line formula equals the cost of a minimal annual food budget times 3. Right, so this assumption was created again in the 1960s when economists and folks who were developing this poverty line that was going to be implemented throughout the United States. They thought that it would be accurate to assume that people need 3 times what it costs to feed themselves and their dependents, and that 3 times that 1/3 of their food cost would be an accurate measure to determine what counts as being poor, right? If you do not make 3 times the food budget that's expected for you and your dependents, you are considered poor. That's how the poverty line is calculated, and it's important to note that this formula has not changed. So in the 1960s, obviously people were thinking that you need 3 times what it costs to feed your family in order to survive, to pay for things like medical bills, clothing, housing, etc. However, this formula has not changed despite the reality that our society has continued to evolve, and obviously this creates a lot more problems for how we are calculating poverty currently. Currently, as of 2020, the poverty line for one person is $12,760. So if you make $12,760 or less in any given year, as of 2020, you would qualify to be living below the poverty line, which means that you qualify for a number of federal subsidies, programs, and benefits to help assist you to compensate for the low income. If you have 2 people in your household, meaning that you are perhaps married or have a single parent with a child, the poverty line grows to $17,240, which means that if you make more than that, you do not qualify for anything. Even if you make a single dollar more than the cutoff, you are not considered poor according to federal regulations. So this becomes very problematic because if I am an adult making $12,761, obviously that $1 is not going to make much of a difference in terms of increasing my socioeconomic standing, increasing the services and goods that I'm able to purchase or the necessities that I'm able to purchase for myself. Yet, according to our nation's definition of what is considered poor, I would not be poor if I made a single dollar above this poverty line threshold, which obviously creates a lot of problems for folks who are struggling to get by. Making a few dollars more than the poverty line or even several $1,000s more than the poverty line really isn't enough to survive in our current society. So in what ways may the calculations for the poverty line be problematic? Well, many expenses such as heat, electricity, childcare, transportation, and healthcare now occupy a greater percentage of the typical family's budget than was true in 1963 when the poverty line was created. The poverty line does not vary by state either, with the exception of Alaska and Hawaii. So therefore, it neglects the variance in the cost of living. So for example, it's a lot cheaper to live in North Dakota, where I'm from, than it is in California or New York. But the poverty line is the same in those areas. So it's obviously not a very accurate representation of how our society has evolved and how the costs of living have evolved throughout the past 50 plus years. And also families making twice the poverty line are still having a difficult time making ends meet. The poverty line is ridiculously low. I mean, $12,000 some is not enough for an individual to comfortably live in our society today, which is why the vast majority of people who are making twice the poverty line are still struggling to get by, right? So these are a lot of problems with the way we calculate the poverty line today, and unfortunately we haven't seen a lot of or any changes to the calculations for the poverty line since it was developed, which is something that has raised a lot of sociological concern. Let's talk about the extent of poverty in the U.S. Since a sharp decline in the 1960s, the U.S. poverty rates have remained relatively stable for the past 50 plus years. So the poverty was kind of at its peak in the 1960s, and then once the poverty line was established, these welfare programs were created to help compensate for the low incomes for these individuals. Poverty rates declined, which is good, but since then they've remained relatively stable since the 1960s. Currently, about 12% of U.S. citizens live in poverty, so that's nearly 40 million Americans currently living in poverty today. That's a really large percentage of our population. About 1/3 of the U.S. population, or more than 100 million people, have incomes that are no higher than twice the poverty line. So if you remember on the previous slide, I said that even people that are making twice the poverty line are still struggling to get by. That's 1/3 of Americans. 1/3 of Americans are struggling to get by, living at rates, are making rates twice the poverty line. So our poverty line measurements, again, really flawed. They're not helping people the way that they're intended to because they haven't been adjusted as society has continued to evolve. So who are the poor? Let's take a look at some demographics here. In terms of race, contrary to what many people think, most poor people in the United States are actually white. Now this is confusing because, of course, the majority of people in the United States are white, so it makes sense that the majority of poor people in the United States would also be white as well. However, when we break it down based off of percentages of races, race and ethnicity do affect the chances of being poor, and you're probably not surprised to find that having a marginalized racial identity or being a person of color increases your likelihood to live in poverty. So while most poor people in the US are white, only 10% of all white people in the United States are white. In comparison, 27% of African Americans, 27% of Latinx, and 12% of Asians in the United States are poor. So being a person of color increases the likelihood that you're going to live in poverty, and we'll unpack this in more detail next week when we talk about race and ethnicity. Gender also affects the likelihood of being poor. In the United States, women and girls are more likely to live in poverty in comparison to men and boys. Women are poorer than men in all racial and ethnic groups, so it doesn't matter what race you are in. If you are a woman, you are likely going to be more poor than in comparison to men, regardless of your race. The high rate of female poverty around the world is actually something that's referred to as the feminization of poverty. This is not a unique problem in the United States. In countries around the world, women earn less than men. Women are more likely to be responsible for children, having more dependents in comparison to men. And as a result of those factors, women are more likely to live in poverty in comparison to men. So this is a global problem. Age also plays a significant factor in predicting the likelihood that a person will experience poverty. About 22% of children under the age of 18 are currently poor, living in poverty. So over 16 million children in the United States today are living in poverty. 39% of African American children and 35% of Latinx children are poor. So again, we can see how race intersects with these variables such as age and gender in unique ways to specifically impact groups of people who occupy multiple marginalized statuses in our society. Nearly 40% of children will live in poverty for at least a year before turning 18. So nearly 50% of children will experience poverty at some point in time here in the United States. Really significant numbers to take into consideration. Children living in families with incomes below twice the official poverty line are called low-income families. So again, 44% of U.S. children live in low-income families. That's nearly 33 million children. And again, like we said, even making twice the poverty line, families are still struggling. Those families qualify as low-income families, and they still struggle just to get by. Poverty rate for U.S. children is the highest out of all wealthy democracies. It's 1.5 times higher than the rate of poverty for children in Canada and 9 times higher than countries in Western Europe. And also, elderly people are significantly impacted by poverty too. 9% of people aged 65 or older are poor, resulting in 3.5 million seniors. In total, 36% of all the poor people in the United States are children, and 8% of the poor are 65 years of age or older. Family structure also impacts this. 32% of families headed by just a woman live in poverty in comparison to 60% of families headed by just a man, and 6% of families headed by just a married couple. So we'll wrap up for here. In the next presentation, we'll take a look at the sociological perspectives on poverty.